Welcome to New Broker, the podcast dedicated to providing insights and inspiration for building a new broking business.
Hello and welcome back to New Broker. I'm your host for today, Annie Kane. And this week we're speaking to a broker that you may remember if you came along to the New Broker Academy 2025 here in Sydney. Vaughan is a retail broker at Aussie Liverpool and has been smashing lights out since he started in his broking career last year. But what does it look like to actually become a new broker, to start a new career and really hit the ground running in this peak busy time? Well, to find out, we brought him into the studio to unpack his lessons. Welcome, Dom. How are you going?
Yeah, really well. Thank you. Lovely being here.
Lovely being here and sharing your story with the wider market, because we had the benefit of chatting earlier this year at the New Broker Academy 2025 when you very kindly volunteered your time to come up on stage and talk about your career progression. And what I loved about that session at the Academy was that we were talking to different brokers in different stages of their career about what they were doing at the moment, how they were building their business. And I thought your story was really interesting. We wanted to share it with the broader audience. So thank you for coming into the studio to chat about being a broker so far, an Aussie broker.
Thank you.
Take me back to the beginning though. So you started in 2024 in your broking career.
I did.
Why did you decide to become a broker in the first place?
To be honest, being a broker was never really at the center of what I was looking to do as a career. I spent a lot of time originally in hospitality. So I was actually in hospitality since I was 14 years old. 14?
Whoa.
Very young, flipping burgers outside of Tesco in the UK. Originally it was just, a gateway to earn a bit of extra money. But that progressed. I realized I was quite good at it. And eventually I worked my way through into different restaurants and different venues and ended up in management. And then when I moved to Sydney back in 2015, I got offers of sponsorship with a hospitality group, and there my career grew. So broking was never really on the cards when I got to Australia. However, I got to a point in my career where I was kind of touching the ceiling of what I could really do with it. I was looking for a bit of a change. I was looking at my lifestyle because obviously I was managing large venues and working till late hours of the night and 5 a.m. finishes. And I really wanted to, focus on family, and I needed a bit of a change from the career. So I kind of fell into broking, so to speak, from that point, and got quite lucky in the process. But it's probably one of the best choices I made.
Oh, hooray! That's good. I like that it's actually been a good decision still.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually probably, even though it's not necessarily the obvious route to broking, going from hospo to broking, but I think having that customer service element, obviously having to deal with people all the time in hospitality as well. You get a lot of high octane kind of events, or you're having to deal with a lot of people a lot of time, and there's a lot of client management. So I guess that's a transferable skill over to broking, and maybe a little bit less hectic. So you decided broking might be better, but was that because you talked to other people who were brokers? Did you go through a process yourself and realize that broking was the career move for you? Because it's not, as I say, a kind of natural symbiosis.
No, and as I said, it wasn't really the expected avenue for where I was going to go. But as you said, I wanted to use my transferable skills of dealing with people at the core of what I was doing. And during that time in hospitality, I met my now fiance, and her parents ended up actually being franchisees of the store that I now work in. And they approached me, a couple of years into our relationship. At that point, I wasn't quite ready to make any sort of transition, but it was always on the back of my mind. And it was, again, an industry where the customer is at the center of it all. So I knew that my skills would benefit going into that space. However, I wasn't quite ready to make the jump. But then last year, it really came to the point where, I was looking for the change, and it made sense to then move and give my opportunity towards Aussie and join their franchise. Yeah.
So Aussie Liverpool is what we're talking about here in New South Wales and Sydney. And that's a pretty big area to cover. Yep. It's a big store as well, Aussie Liverpool. So you've got the benefit of working now with your in-laws, or in-laws to be. Congratulations on the engagement. Yeah. So did you then did they bring you in to be helping with credit first? They kind of go, we want you as a broker, maybe go and do your Cert 4 immediately? Like, I wonder what your stepping stone into broking actually was.
Yeah, no, it was pretty in the deep end, really. It was straight onto my Cert 4. Aussie has this amazing broking academy that you get to do for 8 weeks. So I was heavily involved in the training, straight from boots on the ground.
Yeah.
There was a lot to learn. Luckily, I did have the experience of, financial experience from managing P&Ls and other venues in the past. So managing finances wasn't particularly new. However, I'd never done the qualifications and the things that were required in order to become a broker officially. But from day dot, it was really being involved with those conversations that brokers within the store were already having and learning the trade as quickly as possible. So it was pretty intense.
Yeah, and I always am amazed, and I think Aussie talked about it at the New Broker Academy when they were sort of unpacking what they do in the 8 weeks. But like, that's an intense 8 weeks of period. Like, I think like a lot of what they're sort of teaching you is really the fundamentals of broking, but also like how to actually write loans pretty much immediately.
That's right.
How did you find that process? Like, what were you sort of most keen to learn in that 8-week academy?
I found it very exciting because it was new and it was coming from hospitality where I'd spent so many years dealing with, the general public, and you never really know what's going to be thrown at you. You become quite adept at dealing with maybe particularly difficult situations or handling inquiries. So for that side of things, I was quite confident in. But in terms of the loan structuring and how to use the systems, this was the part that I really dug in deep with and really made my main focus during those 8 weeks. Aussie has the benefit of being, an Australian brand that's well recognized, but also it has a lot of systems that make the role of a broker a lot more straightforward in terms of the systems they use to actually write the deals and get the submissions across to the lenders. So there was all the benefits, but it was a lot to learn in that initial period. And I tried to throw myself in as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Now, I'm guessing because of the family ties, Aussie was pretty much the only option you had. Did you ever think about, though, going anywhere else? Did you ever talk to any other aggregators?
I've got to be honest, I didn't.
Yeah.
It became very obvious to me pretty quick that although I got quite lucky with who it is that I was actually being placed with, for me, they were the best choice. They were the market leaders in terms of the technology that they're using. And I really felt that they were the best brokerage positioned to get the most for me, who was a bit older coming into the role, to get the most out of the situation. So I did believe that Aussie was the best fit, and I still believe that, and I've really enjoyed it ever since making that decision.
And it's been a lot happening at Aussie recently. I feel like, they've been bringing in AI. Yep. They launched the new Find, Buy, Own kind of mantra earlier this year, and really looking at making it much more of a property ecosystem. They're like overhauling how the stores are working as well. There's been a lot going on, a lot of like evolution, I suppose, and revolution at Aussie in terms of how they're actually running the brokerage. So really interesting time to be joining. Have you started using like any of the AI tools that are out there? And if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them now are built into our platform. So from payslip analyzers to contract reviews, we're going AI, AI agentic. So everything that we do has AI built into it now, which has really allowed us as the broker to spend more time focusing on the customer and less time focusing on the tedious paperwork and the back of house stuff.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much in everything that we do now, even from that initial call or conversation with the customer, dot pointing what the key points of the topic were that we discussed, and really filtering those back into a review afterwards, so that we can make sure that we have heard everything the customer is looking to get out of the conversation, and we can dial back in on those things. So it's been, it's pretty much in everything that we're doing now.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about the operations, but I want to go back to, I guess, like how you kind of set up as a broker. So when you started, did you go, I'm just going to write resi? Did you think I'm going to write everything? Were you being fed leads to like actually deal with? Like, I wonder how you establish what kind of broker you're going to be.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, I wasn't really sure on what to expect. And I think like every broker, when they start, they have this, vision that they're going to write everything. and they're going to be a master of the trade straight away, and there's going to be no loan they can't write. And you learn very quickly that it's something that it doesn't always fit into place what you think your vision is going to be. I was dealing with a lot of first home buyers at the time, a lot of people looking to refinance, but a lot of my first customers were not particularly easy in terms of the complexity of what they were looking to do, which now when I reflect on it, it was actually a positive thing for me because it helped me learn very quickly. But in the time, it was it could be quite stressful because, coming from a service background, I wanted to obviously offer these people the best experience they could possibly have. But having a limited amount of knowledge in that and experience in that moment meant that, I needed to rely on those people around me to really bolster my understanding about what it was that to achieve the outcome that the client was looking to achieve.
Yeah. And I guess that's the benefit of working in a brokerage that already has established brokers around you, and also working for a big brokerage brand where you can you've got a lot of access and support. I think a lot of time when people kind of just start out, especially if they're on their own, it's a bit like, I don't know what I don't know. So if you kind of get stuck on something, they're like, how do I even get out of this hole? So having people around you that have a bit more experience or have access to them is really important. Did you kind of find when it was a bit harder that the things that made it harder was lack of policy knowledge? Was it actually a lack of options from the lenders themselves? What was it that was kind of the main challenge?
I think as a new broker, you kind of have this feeling where you feel like you should know everything. And there's so many different policies with different lenders, and you get used to finding which lender does a certain niche really well and which maybe wouldn't be your first choice. But when you're starting, I don't think that has quite sunk in yet, and you feel this expectation to know everything. So it was really just a case of taking every customer as it comes, getting as much information as possible, then leaning on my peers and the previous knowledge that I've built from my training to then go back and give them the best solution. And it was a process of doing that over and over again and kind of refining down those lenders and understanding exactly what some of them are great in and what others maybe aren't so great in.
Yeah. Can you remember what the first deal was that you settled?
Yes.
Oh, actually, okay. I'm going to ask this two different ways. First deal that settled and the first deal you actually worked on.
So the first deal I worked on actually settled in September this year.
This year?
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
that was a slow burn.
It was a bit of an interesting one. It was a couple of sisters. It was my first store appointment. So I was very excited. And it didn't really go how I expected it. Sadly, their mother had actually passed away. They'd inherited the house. And during the process, they got themselves into quite a bit of debt with credit cards and things to afford all these other costs around, funeral arrangements. So it was quite emotionally driven conversation. There were tears.
From you?
Almost.
Everyone.
Yeah, it was, it was completely not what I expected. But I was all in. They'd gone back to their bank and they'd been refused help. So it became very much, a focus of mine to really help these people. And I love that. And we still talk now. We had their 30-day check-in not too long ago, and they're very happy, and they've got all this money now that they've freed up, and they're living their best lives. But they went through so many, we had them pre-approved 3 times throughout the process because the will kept getting adjusted and people had to re-sign paperwork, and it was a really projected process for them. But we got it done in the end. So it was incredibly positive. And off the back of that, they've actually got a granddaughter now that's looking to buy their first home next year. So
cool.
It was a relationship there as well.
Yeah.
And we made the joke afterwards, who are we going to talk to now every weekend? Because I've been speaking to them both now for over a year.
Yeah.
I'm not going to forget that anytime soon.
No, that's such a great story, and I think it's such a great example of why brokers are so important, because people do get knocked back from lenders and they don't always know why, they don't know a way forward, and then you can kind of really get into quite a lot of difficulty if you kind of really don't know where to go. So well done to you, firstly, for helping them out. That's great that they had a solution.
Were great.
Yeah. So that was one of the ones that was your first meeting. What was your first deal that settled?
The first deal I settled was a refinance. Obviously, refinances tend to settle quicker. I think when you start as a broker, you're hoping that your first deal is going to be refinances, because when you're commission only, like I am, it's one of those things you're eager to get a paycheck.
Yeah.
But it was it was a refinance, and he was actually, we formed a relationship over the couple of weeks I was speaking to him, and he was a bit on the fence about where he wanted to go, and in the end he actually turned down a cashback offer to go with the choice that I'd presented him, because over the long term it actually worked out better for him. That was a bit of a win. And now I'm actually helping him with an investment property. So it's
one of the many investors in the market at the moment. I don't know if you saw the stats recently from ABS, but like a record proportion of investor lending at the moment. It's been like 40% increase over a year from September to September, which is madness. So many people looking at investment properties. But I think one of the things that I'm really curious as well is when you're just starting out is like, where do you find these clients to begin with? Now, the two sisters, it sound like, walked into the store and you were there first day of work, or at least like one is sort of fresh, more or less, fresh off the academy, so pretty new. But did you have to kind of go and then find your own business? Is it foot traffic mostly coming in for you? Like, how do you actually generate leads?
Yeah, where our store is located, there's not really a lot of foot traffic. So it's a lot of going out there and making connections. I did what most new brokers did in those initial few months, which was pick up the phone and start calling real estate, start calling conveyancers, solicitors in the local area. I targeted all those with like 5-star ratings on Google, just to make sure that I was working with the right people that were going to look after people as much as I wanted to. But it was really going out and talking to as many people as possible. And I mentioned to you when we last spoke that, in those initial 6 months, I went out and I was in the Uber at the weekends, because I was, making my money stretch as far as possible.
Yeah.
And every person that came in the Uber, I was having a conversation, giving them a card. And I met plenty of people just from doing that. So it was literally every opportunity. People at the gym, people when I was, paying at the supermarket, it was every opportunity to make a connection with somebody. I did a lot of social media, which I think is hard to avoid now. Which has been very positive. It's been slow growth, but it's been positive growth. And I've had a lot of people reach out through my own socials. But really, it was not so much company generated that came through advertisements and things like that. I think the ones that really progressed to deals were the ones that I'd gone out and made the connection myself. And just by actually meeting the person or having that engagement face to face, I think makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, you can't beat human connection.
That's right.
Yeah. And I'm going to take a quick break here, Dom. We come back and actually like to talk to you about your actual process then. So after you've done your initial meeting or you found your clients, like how would you actually progress them through to settlement? And we'll get into that just after this. So you were talking earlier, just before the break, about how you've been kind of like really building your own connections and building your own book and leads. And I'm always curious to kind of understand, well, how do people actually do that? Because a lot of the time, new brokers will say, I talk to these real estate agents, but they already have a broker that they refer to. And this accountant already has someone that they work with. Like, how am I going to have an in when I'm still new? So how did you do it?
As I said, it was just having that conversation with as many people as possible. But if I'm getting really granular about the conversations I had with real estate, for example, which always seems like the most obvious choice of relationship to form when you're a new broker. As you said, a lot of them already had brokers that they were dealing with. So the conversation would always be, what is that broker that you're dealing with doing well? What aren't they doing so well in? How can I add value to your business? And I approached everyone that I spoke to that was already running a successful business was, how can I add value? It's not what can I get out of our relationship, but give me an opportunity to show you what I'm capable of. And, if something comes back from that, then that's fantastic. But if we can find some mutual benefit, then that's a win-win for everybody. So when it came to the accountants, the real estate, those sort of relationships, that would be how I approached that. And normally it's just arranging to have a quick 15-minute coffee and a bit of a chat and get to know each other. When it came to building my client book through self-generated means such as social media or just speaking to people in the gym or at the supermarket and those sorts of things, it was very much just a case of not opening with, "Hi, I'm a mortgage broker. How can I help you?" But
Yeah.
really just trying to understand them, because everyone that's looking to buy property or to get into market is trying to fix a problem and solve a problem. People are trying to, are told every day about how difficult it is. So it's really just making sure that you can build a bit of a relationship and trust first, so that they feel confident enough to ask you the questions.
Yeah.
Just getting up and having as many conversations with people as possible.
Gosh, you need a lot of bravery and confidence to go up to someone in the gym and start a conversation with a stranger. Just be like, "Oh, that looks like a heavyweight. Do you know what else is heavy? Debt." So, like, how do you make that like initial like confidence, I suppose, barrier for a lot of people? That seems like too much.
Yeah, look, I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not the most confident person. So, doing social media, going up and having conversations with people is not something that necessarily comes naturally to me. So it's really not being afraid to just put yourself out there. And most people are just looking to have a bit of a connection with somebody anyway. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about home loans. It's not a particularly exciting conversation starter.
What? It's the most exciting.
But, just not being afraid to make small talk.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised at how many times you'll just be having a general chit chat with somebody and it will lead on to other things. And I've met a lot of my own business just from doing that. And it's rarely been about the home loan to start off with. It's just really about getting to know people first.
Yeah.
And, in the gym, you'll see the same people all the time. So it's saying hi, you might see them a couple of times, just introduce yourself, hello. Next time you're asking about, what do they do for work? And eventually the conversation leads down a path that you might be able to help somebody.
Love that. And you mentioned social media here, and I think I'd love to pick your brain about what you're doing and how you're doing it, because again, so often people are being found by, clients from all over Australia, not necessarily just in their local area, but also increasingly, online, whether through social media or through, AI and ChatGPT now, or the kind of LLM languages, large language models that are kind of providing people with recommendations of brokers to go to as well, which we'll be talking a lot about this coming year, I think, a lot of our events. But for you, when you're doing social media, like, what sort of things are you doing? Are you doing like dances on TikTok? Are you doing like kind of LinkedIn, posts? Are you doing Twitter battles? Like, what are you doing? Sorry, X battles. What are you doing?
Yeah, look, I wanted to keep my social me. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to get up and do a silly dance, but I think going into social media, the one thing that I wanted to make sure that I was someone that was going to add value and be informative, firstly. I see a lot of people jumping onto socials and trying to be entertainment straight away. And for some people that works really well, and you'll see plenty of brokers that do a really amazing job. I'm not that kind of broker. So I was thinking about how is it that I can get a message out there to people that's going to benefit them. And I really niched down. And the easiest thing to do for me was around first home buyers, because it's something I'm incredibly confident in. And it is something that I find incredibly rewarding as well, to be able to help people that are looking to buy their first home. So my socials are predominantly focused around first home buying experience and the journey. And I've kind of focused it on that. I try and keep it as relatable as possible. I try not to overly edit myself on social media, because I want the people to see me for me and it'd be the same experience as if they were coming into the store and meeting me face to face. I don't want this artificial version of myself online.
Yeah. Loads of filters.
Correct.
Being like, oh my God, you're like a different person. Yeah.
I've tried to keep it grounded and educational.
So first home buyers, again, a big part of the market at the moment with the expanded guarantee scheme, now called the 5% deposit scheme. They've changed all the names of all of the things. Yeah. The 5% deposit scheme now, formerly known as the home guarantee scheme. So that expanding out, have you found that has been a real driver for first home buyer activity at the moment? Yes,
it's been huge for us since they launched in October. So we are seeing that a lot of lenders now are their wait times for pre-approval is really blowing out, and we're seeing that a lot across the whole industry. So first home buyers are waiting longer to get pre-approved, which has become a bit of a problem, because then we're going into December and kind of the market starts to shut down a little bit during that time. So there's a bit of an overlap that I'm finding with new first home buyers coming in and when they can actually get pre-approved to go out and start house hunting. But we're seeing a lot more people now, as is everyone, coming into the market and benefiting from the scheme that's available to them. So definitely taking off the income caps has made a huge difference, because there were so many people that couldn't use the scheme, and they got their 5%, but they earned too much money. And realistically, it's become so difficult now, especially in Sydney, where the housing prices are going up, weekly, for people to use that initial bit of money they've saved to get in. And we're also, the average salary is 100K. So, people are not able to use the schemes back before October 1st. So it's made a huge difference, and you definitely see the repercussions of that happening now.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying about like all the lender turnarounds having blown out. And I think we saw recently some of the lenders actually saying we're not going to be doing pre-approvals at all, because we're pausing, because we actually have so much flow coming through. It's a big issue across the board. I think everyone, not just for first-time buyers, but for investors as well, seeing a lot of business coming through the traps at the moment. And actually, I think this is an area that a lot of the regulators are also looking at. APRA is looking at investor lending booms, looking at first home deposit scheme, because it's a 95% mortgage, basically, being like, how are they actually stress testing this? Is that something like that's difficult to talk about with your clients when you're kind of saying this is the size of the loan you're going to be taking on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very transparent when I'm talking to my clients. You have I deal with a lot of first home buyers predominantly, and they're very excited to get into the market, and they want to use every last penny they have to make it happen. And you can't blame people for wanting to do that. But I do try and add a lens of reality, because I think it's really important when you're making such a big financial decision to understand exactly how much it's going to cost. And also, you may have this home that you've wanted for so many years, but you want to be able to live as well. So really understanding, what the hidden costs are is so important to first home buyers, which maybe might not be educated or aware of what those look like. So it's just having a really transparent chat, I feel. It doesn't always happen from what I hear, but definitely for me, it's very important, because I just treat everyone as if how I would want to be treated, and I'd want to know all the details up front, so that I can go away and make the most informed decision I can possibly make.
What are some of the common questions that you get from first home buyers at the moment?
Do I need to pay stamp duty? So, I mean, we may have had the change with the Australian government's 5% deposit scheme, such a mouthful, but stamp duty hasn't changed. So you've got property purchase caps that have gone up, but at the same time, stamp duties stay the same.
Yeah.
So although first home buyers are coming into the market and they might be able to buy a property that's now more than what they could before, they don't realize that
costs have gone up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And stamp duty is now applies, because they're buying in a different, the purchase cost is completely changed. So that's a big one. Repayments is obviously up there. People want to understand, if I get this loan amount, how much is that actually going to cost me? And what we're seeing now, because a lot more people with higher incomes are coming into the market, that can become quite a large number. But mainly the stamp duty. I think the stamp duty is definitely something that needs to change in the future as well, if we are going to really support first home buyers.
It's interesting you say that, actually. We did a survey on the back of Broker Pulse, I think it was a couple of months ago, just before the changes came in, and I asked Broker Pulse if they could put in a question asking consumers, what is the home guarantee scheme? And something like 30% of them said you don't have to pay stamp duty.
Yeah.
It's weird that that's a thing that people have got in their heads. But yeah. Obviously, it's again why I need a broker to talk to you through the details and what everything entails. You mentioned as well about, kind of being yourself on socials and doing a lot of social media posts. So do you then put like a call to action in whatever you're doing, if it's a video or an actual, just a normal post? Do you kind of say like, reach out here, or do you give them a way to kind of find you?
Yeah, I've got obviously a link in my bio that links to, my broker page that allows you to book an appointment with me. Being that I'm pretty early in my career, I probably haven't established those boundaries yet, where I if someone wants to book a video call at 7 o'clock in the evening on a Saturday, I'm your guy. But I always try and not do the hard sell at the end of any video. I don't think anyone's really interested in that. I feel that if there's something that people come across that adds some value, that they'll want to reach out organically. So I don't normally put in, a call to action. If I can, everyone's trying to be sold something these days, and I don't want to be that guy. I'd rather that people stumble or come across my social media, they find some sort of benefit, and they're like, okay, this is the guy that I want to have a chat with, because I feel like he's going to offer me the best information.
Now, you talked earlier about the fact that Aussie has a lot of AI and tools that helps you kind of free up some of the administrative workload that you have to do as a broker. And I think anecdotally, we say it normally takes between 8 and 12 hours for most loans to be done.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of brokers are like, that takes me a lot longer. But that's just like, let's say on average between 8 and 12 hours for one loan to get written. And within that is a huge amount of administration. So what is it exactly? Walk me through your process of where you're using tech to help free up that administration, but also like where you're spending the most amount of time. So let's say I'm a first home buyer and I walk into Aussie Liverpool and I say, hi Dom, I'd love to buy my first home with you. Walk me through what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, we've got basically our whole application process built into our platform. So we'll be having that initial conversation around what it is they're looking to do. The question I ask everybody that comes in to have a conversation, whether that be a phone call, video call, or store appointment, is what do you expect to get out of this meeting today? And I think that's such an important question to ask, because so many people will come in, be it first home buyers, and they'll have their own agenda. And unless you ask that question straight up, you may end up talking for 20 minutes about things they really don't want to know the answers, or they already have the answers that they're looking for when you're discussing those sorts of things. So I think that's a really important question to ask everybody. But our application process from there is directly built into our platform. So as we're having the conversation, we're filling out the details. End to end, it can take about 20 minutes, no longer, to get everything that we need. We have our own app, so they're able to download the app on the fly and upload their documents straight to that, which then filters through our back end of our system. It pulls payroll detail out, so it will calculate yearly incomes and things for us automatically through the power of AI, which is fantastic.
Very helpful, yeah.
And we even have the ability to transfer that information across to a lender calculator automatically. So we don't even have to tediously fill out lender calculators. So it's little things like that save so much time. And when you are so busy, going from one appointment to the next, or you're picking up the phone and making calls, you want to be able to focus on the customer and getting them the outcome, and less about the administrative work in the background. So things like that for us, especially in the last 6 months, have made a huge difference to how quickly we can turn around and get a lodgement through.
Yeah. How much difference do you think?
I mean, I could probably get a loan submitted in an hour now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty good going.
Yeah.
So do you then have any other kind of back office support, or are you just fully relying now on the tech that your aggregator provides you?
I mean, there's a lot of the tech, which has been a huge help. We do have some fantastic admin within our store that take care of filling out lender AOL and getting the actual final submission. However, most of the brokers can do that themselves fairly quickly now. Coming next year, we are looking at outsourcing some of that to a CS team out somewhere else that's going to streamline the process even further for us, which is good for us and it's good for the customer because we can get that application through faster. But we do have a little bit of support there as well that allows us to fill in the blanks so that we can focus back towards the customer and helping them and answering any questions rather than, head in a spreadsheet.
Yeah. And the other things that I guess, specifically looking at Aussie as well, is things that outside of the normal kind of broking area, because they're kind of doing a lot more in sort of property ecosystem. So working with real estate agents, working with buyers agents, working with conveyancers. Yeah. Have you used any of those sort of services?
Yeah. I mean, I use them with Aussie religiously now, and it's just become part of the process. And I think what Aussie's doing so well with their Find by Own is that they're putting all these different systems that people would have to go out and find themselves under one banner. So, normally you'd do your appointment with your broker, you get your pre-approval, and you've got to go out and find a conveyancer. And then, you're making a phone call, and then maybe you get a recommendation from your friend down the pub about who to use. And so it was like a really broad scope of people you had to engage just to do something that's quite simple. So we have our in-house conveyancers now. We have our own buyers agents that we can refer people onto if they want to engage with them too. We're even able to connect people with local real estate if they're looking to sell their property. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people. And I think that the feedback so far has been phenomenal. And I think everyone's quite like relieved that they can just come and have everything at their fingertips straight away instead of taking out that stressful point of trying to find somebody. So it's made a huge difference to us.
Buyer's agents is a really interesting one. And I think the last couple of years, we've really seen an increase in people using buyer's agents, but also people becoming buyer's agents. Like I think a lot of brokers have also started offering buyer's agency services, and we're seeing a lot of people really kind of setting up more referral partnerships with buyer's agents.
Yeah.
Have you seen that yourself as a broker, like more of your clients are looking to use the services of a buyer's agent?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even more so now that, the housing market has become so competitive as it has, especially in Sydney. I mean, buyer's agents was always one of those things where people thought it was for the rich and wealthy and the people that already own several properties.
For the investors.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a no-brainer if you're in somewhere like the United States where it's just part of the process, and it's becoming more popular here. And we have seen a huge uptick in the people that are willing to engage with our buyer's agents. I mean, it's hard enough finding a property on your own, especially if you're a first home buyer. And it's also understanding where the market is going to go in the future so that you know that your investment is going to be a profitable investment for, say, that you're looking to, purchase something in the future or turning into investment or whatever. So buyer's agents have been incredibly valuable to a lot of our customers now. And you're seeing more first home buyers actually use the buyer's agents too, which has been quite interesting, because I think people are starting to see the value in using a buyer's agents. And it allows them to find a property a lot faster. And, you could have a first home buyer that might need their pre-approval renewed after 3 months.
Yeah.
Might take them 6 months to find a property. Well, in Sydney, the property prices are going up $5,500 a month. So if you protract that over 6 months, you're really chasing.
Stumped.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to save up again for your deposit.
Correct. So sometimes engaging with a buyer's agents, even though it's a little bit of an upfront cost, it can actually save a lot of money in the future as well.
Yeah, and particularly I think, for those sort of people looking at that 1.2 in Sydney, just impossible to find a property for that at the moment that isn't already got, 15 million people trying to fall over themselves to buy it. When you look at then, I guess, other things that you're doing to kind of make your process and your system and your flow faster, is there anything else that you do that you've kind of learned over the last year or so that have helped you get to an answer or to a lodgement quicker?
I think, and every new broker I think goes through this process. They'll do a lodgement with a certain lender, and they'll do a lodgement with someone else, and they'll go, okay, actually this person does that a little bit better than how this person dealt with it. So I'm a prolific note taker. So every deal that I write, I make sure that I fill in my own personal spreadsheet with all the information that associated with that deal, so that when it comes back to a point where I have a customer that has a similar scenario, I can go straight back and see, okay, this is the best person that actually is to place with. And then I can look into the policy, I can contact the BDM and make sure that that's still the right choice. But just in doing that, that's really made my decision process a lot faster. And that's helped me a lot. And we don't really, we have Brokerpedia and things like that, where you can search for lender policy and trying to find the right fit that way, but nothing beats your own experience. So I think that just, as you start on the process to writing more and more deals, just making sure that you keep a bit of a catalogue of who was best at what, so that you can narrow down the choice for the customer quicker.
Yeah, love that. I think that's a good one. I think that as well, also being able to look back at what you've done, also really super helpful. But you mentioned there about, some lenders having a slightly different process or maybe a better process. Can you give me an example of what that would be, like what the difference would be?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one for brokers, obviously, turnaround times is up there. But I think for me, it's always, it's not so much about what's easier for me, but what's going to be the best result for my customers. So that's the approach that I take my business for everything. So, a lender may have a longer SLA, but do they get a better result? And there's certain people, especially within the first home buyer space at the moment, certain lenders are a lot faster than others. But when you're really looking at saying, a first home buyer that's just qualifying, they're getting into the market for the first time, rate and repayment is important. sometimes you need to take the harder option to make it easier for them in the future than just take what's immediately available. So again, it's just trial and error. You get used to who it is that you want to place people with. But having that conversation around what the customer's really looking to get out of it is the most important thing, because sometimes rate isn't always the most important thing, and it could be a policy difference, or it could allow them to move on a property faster, or so that's where you've really got to dig into the detail with the customer and find out what they want.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break here, Dom. When we come back, I'd like to talk to you about what's next for you. You know, you've got your first year under your belt. What's the plan for year 2? What's the plan for year 5? What's the plan for year 10? And we'll get into that after this break. So now that you've kind of cut your teeth in broking, you've got into your groove, you've got your clients through the door, you kind of know what your process is, you know what the lenders are doing. We're in a new financial year, coming into a new calendar year. What has been, I guess, the thing that's on the horizon for you that you're most sort of looking forward to? Let's say 2026, New Year's resolutions for you as a broker.
Well, I am stepping into a franchisee role in February.
Yeah.
So we're just going through the planning for that, and we're getting our yearly plan together and what that looks like. So that's
in the same franchise you currently work in?
Same franchise. So I'll be a co-franchisee. So that's very exciting. We've really made an effort to engage community this year. Community is kind of our focus point. We recently were one of the main sponsors in Liverpool for their Primavera event, which was a 3-day food festival. We do a lot of engagement with the Liverpool Hospital now, where we did free coffees for doctors and nurses, you know, going around Medico policy and just offering to help through those means. So we're trying to build as many relationships in the local community. So that's really the focus for 2026. The Liverpool store has been, you know, supporting the community there for over 25 years. But in the last few years, we haven't done that much within the local community because we've been focused on the business itself. So we really want to get back out there and build some awareness. And it's super fun to do that anyway. So
yeah. And plus, I mean, who doesn't want doctors as clients?
Correct.
Yeah. So looking at then kind of that's for next year, but longer term, like what do you hope to kind of get out of your broking career the next sort of 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, I come from a management background. So I know my strengths. I'd love to, you know, have another store in 5 years. You know, I'd love to have junior brokers. I'm very systematic, so I'd like to, you know, be able to come in and train new brokers. And, you know, the training reels are definitely not off for me just yet. So, but I love to learn and I love to teach as well. So I feel like if I can add value to the next generation of brokers as well within a new store, that would be an incredible achievement. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm aiming at. Obviously, the landscape of broking is changing. It's moving less so from a commission structure to more a PAYG structure, which is an interesting change. But I'm excited to see where my career goes in the next 5 years. And
you've been in Australia, I think you said now, for 10 years.
Yes.
So let's say fast forward to another 10 years time. Do you think you'll still be a resi broker? Do you think you would be doing anything else? Like, do you think you'll be kind of diversifying? I'm assuming you're just still a broker, but you know, fingers crossed. But do you think you'll kind of stay as a first home buyer specialist?
Definitely residential, I think. I have written commercial. I actually did my chiropractor's clinic.
Cool.
So again, about having relationships and just speaking to everybody. But I definitely find it the most rewarding when you feel like you're really making a difference. So although first home buyers tends to be the staple that every new broker comes into, I'd definitely say that's the part I enjoy the most. Definitely probably going to stay residential. A bit of commercial sprinkled in there as well, of course, but it's definitely where I find it the most, I get the most value for me out of the role. And where I feel like I can deliver the most value back to the customers.
So you feel like, it sounds like the best part of the role for you is, kind of helping people achieve their dreams and get them on the property ladder. But what have been the biggest challenges or the biggest bugbears you have in broking?
I think initially it was just how different every lender handles things in terms of an application process. So I do feel that there's still quite a large disconnect between the lenders and the aggregators in terms of some lenders are more open to, really supporting the broking industry. Some lenders not so much. But just in terms of how the systems translate from our systems to their systems can sometimes be a bit clunky. I feel like there's not been a lot of focus on making it as streamlined as it could possibly be. And I think I speak for a lot of brokers when they find that in their first year of broking. It's a bit of a learning curve from lender to lender. So I think that is the biggest challenge I've really found as a new broker, is just learning the systems. We touched on policy a little bit earlier, but I've realized now that, it's about having that initial conversation and really looking at policy afterwards, and you become accustomed to who you'll fit with pretty quick. But try not to get bogged too down in the details from lender to lender.
Are there any holes in policy at the moment that you think there could be a good solution for? So, for example, I was speaking to someone earlier and they were talking about how, Macquarie paused company and trust lending. And they were a bit like, yeah, but I mean, so many non-banks now have kind of filled in that space really quickly. But then they were like, I wish that had been the case 2 years ago, because we couldn't find lenders for love of money then. Is there anything at the moment where you're like, there's a real gap here where you kind of don't find a good home for a particular client?
Yeah, the first thing that springs to mind with all the changes to the first home scheme is genuine savings. So income caps have gone up, property purchase caps have gone up. So you may have a couple that say, they want to keep some of their money aside because they might be getting married, or they're planning to have a family, or they're booking the honeymoon, but the lender's still expecting to use the majority of that savings towards the purchase. Now, I think that although it's good to make sure that these schemes are going to the right people, I feel there needs to be a little bit of a little change in that space in order to make it a little bit more realistic about how much money people actually have in their bank account after they've made the purchase. And everything's become more expensive, and that policy hasn't really changed. And there's some lenders that do that better, that will allow the customer to keep a little bit more money in their back pocket after the purchase. But it's a bit of a difficult conversation when these first home buyers have spent so long saving all this money, and it's been very difficult for them to do, and they feel very rewarded to have done it, and they've got this plan about how they're going to go about buying their property, and they suddenly realize that they've got to actually get rid of the plans for the future at the moment and use every last penny towards the home. I feel there needs to be a little bit more flexibility in that space.
Okay, great. And when it comes to then, I suppose, looking at the things that you're sort of doing to really not only build your business, but also, build your life. You're getting married soon, which you mentioned. So congratulations.
Thank you.
But, there's big life goals that we all have as brokers and as business people ourselves. So trying to find time to do, the wedding planning, or to try and think about how am I going to adopt into this franchise business, and then being like, oh, I also need to do all my accreditation stuff, my CPD. And, there's so much to think about. So how do you actually manage your time? Do you actually think about week by week, I'm going to block out time here to do this? Do you do it organically? Do you kind of plan at the beginning of the year? I'm just wondering how you actually structure what you're doing for your life and for your business.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started broking, there was no blockouts in my calendar ever. It was, I wanted to get in front of as many people as possible. So, and I think that's a normal process that new brokers go through. Now the way I structure my week is that my weekends are still open, but people can, book video calls and things like that with me over the weekend. I get notified. I'm happy to jump on a video call or a phone call over the weekend, no problem. But up until 11 a.m. every day, that's my time. So 11 a.m. is, up until that point, is my time for responding to the customers that I'm already dealing with any of my lenders or any outstanding bits and pieces that need to be dealt with in that time frame. I'll use that time to go to the gym, focus on myself. But I think it's really important to just have that period in which is yours, and that you can assign time to the things that are most important in that moment, because I think it's easy to get in the snowball of the day, and you end up it's not good for you and it's not good for your customers, because you feel like you're scrambling. So I do make sure now to set across that time out in the mornings for me, And that allows me to have much better relationships with my customers, much better relationships with my partner. And I have much more time for myself to really focus on, exercise and being healthy. So that's how I manage my week now.
Yeah, awesome. And then if you, in closing, Dom, thank you for letting me pick your brain so thoroughly, but if you had any advice for either, if you could go back and do your journey all over again as a broker, like what advice would you give yourself or anyone else starting out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's really important not to be hard on yourself as a new broker. I think it's like I said, it's very easy to feel like you need to know everything. And there's so many things you just don't know, and that's okay. I would have aligned myself with people within the industry faster, I think. So I think it's really important to go out and meet like-minded brokers and individuals like yourself and share experience. I've now got a really good support structure in my own store, not just my franchisees, but other, brokers that have been in the industry for 20 plus years. I lean on them regularly. We have regular catch-ups now around, what's working, what isn't, what are you working on at the moment. So as much communication as possible with people that have done it for a lot longer than you have. I think if I could go back and do it again, I would make those connections a lot faster and really lean into it. I think there's a lot of pressure on brokers to feel like they have to know everything, and it's okay not to know everything. Yeah,
love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, with our wide audience as well here on New Broker, and best of luck for 2026.
Thank you very much.
And for the wedding. Yeah.
Thank you.
If you've got any questions for me or for Dom, then do feel free to reach out. You can reach me at editor@theadvisor.com.au, and of course Aussie Liverpool.
Correct.
To check out Dom Vaughan and what he's been doing. And of course, take a listen back to previous episodes on the Advisor Podcast Network to find out how other leading brokers have been running their broking businesses. We've got about 10 years worth, I think, of podcasts now, going back for New Broker, Elite Broker, Women of Finance, In Focus, and What's Making Headlines. So lots of podcasts to keep you entertained over the festive period. Dom, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year if I don't see you before the break.
Thank you, you too.